All right, everyone, welcome back to Watchdog News. This is Jared Campbell. So, this evening, the road to World War III. How Emmanuel Macron's warning signals a potential global catastrophe. So, French President Emmanuel Macron, in his recent statements about Russian President Putin imperialistic ambitions, highlight the growing instability in global geopolitics. Macron's assertion that Putin is attempting to revise history and globalize the war in Ukraine suggests that the conflict is no longer just a regional crisis. It is evolving into a confrontation with the West. With NATO countries increasing their involvement, the risk of escalation into a full-scale war involving nuclear armed states becomes even more real. If tensions continue to rise, the world could be at the pre-recipe of a third world war. Where we are going to watch a 13-minute address by Emmanuel Macron. This happened the other day. This address is going to underscore the European Union's deepening commitment to Ukraine, reinforcing the idea that this is not just Ukraine's war, but a European war against Russian expansionism. His rhetoric that you'll see suggests that the EU is willing to take bolder steps to confront Russia, potentially including direct military aid and greater economic sanctions. This aligns with his previous warnings, talking about Macron, that Europe cannot afford to remain passive in the face of Russian aggression. So I'm going to share the screen over. We're going to listen to a 13-minute video of Macron's speech. Thank you all again for following. You know, as I kind of laid the groundwork here, that World War III is coming, and it's coming.
Maintenant blessés.
The war in Ukraine has led to huge numbers of lives lost.
Ont changé.
Our ally, the United States, has changed its position.
Planer le doute sur la suite.
And there are doubts about what will happen next. At the same time, even the United States is trying to impose tariffs on goods coming from Europe. And the threat we are witnessing from war and terror is not diminishing. Our peace, our security are more uncertain. We are entering a new era.
L'Ukraine dure maintenant depuis plus de 3 ans.
The war in Ukraine has lasted more than 3 years. And since the first day, we decided to support Ukraine and impose sanctions on Russia. And that was the right choice, because it's not just the people of Ukraine who are fighting for their freedom. It's also our security which is under threat. If a country can invade its neighbor in Europe and go unpunished, then nobody can be sure of anything. It will be the law of might is right. And peace can no longer be guaranteed on our own continent. History has taught us that lesson. And beyond Ukraine, the Russian threat is real. It affects European countries. It affects us. The conflict as Ukraine has become a global conflict. We're seeing North Korean fighters, Iranian equipment, which is being used to help Russia arm further. President Putin is violating our borders to assassinate opponents, manipulate elections, hack hospital systems. We see lies being disseminated on social media, and our limits are being tested in space, on land, at sea, in the air and behind our screens.
Et la Russie, dans le même temps, continue de se réarmer.
Russia, through all this time, is continuing to arm, spending more than 40% of its budget to that end. By 2030, Russia plans to increase its army to have 300,000 additional soldiers, 3,000 rather extra jet fighters. Who can believe that in this context, Russia will stop at Ukraine? Russia has become and will remain a threat to France and Europe. It is something I deeply regret.
Se fera sur notre continent avec une
But in the long term,
redevenue apaisée et pacifique.
peace will return to our continent with a pacified Russia.
Nous devons faire avec.
But we have to look at the situation before us.
Ces spectateurs serait une folie.
To remain a spectator in this dangerous world would be crazy.
Décision pour
We need,
pour la sécurité.
without any further ado, to take steps to guarantee the security of France,
Toutes les
Europe,
initiatives
and Ukraine first.
dans le bon sens.
All of the initiatives for peace are going in the right direction, and I welcome them.
Continuer d'aider les Ukrainiens
We need to continue to
jusqu'à ce qu'ils puissent
help
négocier
Ukrainians resist
une paix solide pour eux.
until they can negotiate with Russia a solid and lasting peace for themselves and for all of us.
Ne peut pas passer
The path to peace cannot be
La
achieved
paix ne peut pas
by
être
abandoning Ukraine. We
Et
cannot conclude peace at any
ne peut pas être la capitulation.
price, according to Russian dictate. The price
Ne peut pas davantage
of peace
traduire
cannot be the collapse of Ukraine, nor can it
que
be
aussi nous avons
based on a weak ceasefire. And we've had experience of this in the past as well. We cannot forget
l'Ukraine dès
that
2014.
Russia
Nous avons
started its invasion of Ukraine in 2014, and we negotiated the Minsk Accords ceasefire. That was something that Russia didn't respect, and we weren't able
déséquilibre, faute de
to
garantie.
maintain the balance because there weren't solid guarantees. So we can't take Russia at its
Et
word.
la sécurité.
Russia has a right to peace and security for itself,
C'est l'intérêt de la sécurité.
and it's in our interest and the interest of
Que nous travaillons
the
avec nos amis britanniques
European continent.
allemands et plusieurs autres pays.
So we're working together
Vous m'avez
with
vu ces
Britain,
dernières semaines.
Germany, and other allies.
Rassemblé plusieurs d'entre eux à
You saw me over the last week traveling for a few days to London, meeting with allies in Paris
Une fois
in order to make commitments that are necessary
pour que
for
le
Ukraine.
à nouveau,
And once a peace agreement is signed to stop Ukraine being invaded by Russia
ça
again,
passera à coup sûr par
we
le soutien à
need
l'armée ukrainienne
to prepare.
dans la durée.
obviously that will involve long-term commitment to the Ukrainian military and perhaps the deployment of European forces.
Elle n'irait pas se battre aujourd'hui. Elle n'irait pas se battre sur la ligne de front. Mais elle serait là, au contraire,
Russia
à la paix signée, pour en
will
garantir le plein respect.
See this.
Dès la semaine prochaine,
Our forces will be there,
les chefs
if necessary,
des pays qui
to guarantee peace, not before a peace agreement is signed. And we will continue to meet with allies to move towards the signing of such an agreement.
durables.
It's a plan for a lasting, solid,
Nous avons préparé avec
verifiable peace
les
agreement,
Ukrainiens et plusieurs autres partenaires européens
which we're working on with European partners and Ukraine,
il y a 15 jours.
and which I went to advocate for in the United States just a few days ago.
Mais
I want to believe that the US will stand by our side, but we have to be ready for that not to be the case.
ou non,
Whether we reach peace in Ukraine soon or not, we need to be able to recognize the Russian threat
et de
and
dissuader.
better defend ourselves in order to deter such attacks.
Il nous faut nous équiper,
Whatever happens, we need
pousser
to
position.
provide ourselves
Et cela,
with more arms, more equipment in terms of
à ce
defense
titre, nous restons attachés à l'OTAN
to provide a dissuasive force.
avec les États-Unis d'Amérique.
And we're committed
Mais il nous faut faire plus.
on that part.
Notre indépendance en matière de
We need to do more than we've done in the past to reinforce our defense and security.
trancher à Washington ou à Moscou.
The
Et oui,
future of Europe cannot be decided on in Moscow
et
or
au sens
Washington.
des 30 dernières années depuis la chute du mur de Berlin,
Since the fall of the Berlin Wall,
à Bruxelles
Oui.
demain lors du Conseil
I've
extraordinaire
seen
qui
3
réunit
decades which are now behind us. We're moving on to a new age. We're meeting
le président du Conseil.
with the Commission tomorrow, the President of the European Council,
Plusieurs
for
décisions.
an extraordinary summit. We'll take a number of
Les États membres pourront
long-awaited steps which we've been proposing for a number of years. Increase in military expenditure,
des
which
financements communs
is
massifs
something that will be allowed without having it to be subject to deficit rules.
européens, des munitions,
Measures to ensure
des
that
armes, des
armaments
équipements.
can be produced on European soil.
J'ai demandé au gouvernement d'être
Latest cutting-edge technology
force nos
will
armées
mobilize the government,
et d'autres
strengthen our armies as soon as possible,
dans toutes nos régions.
and accelerate
Je réunirai
the
les
industrialization
ministres compétents
in
des
all of our
industriels,
countries.
secteurs,
We'll work together with the
l'Europe.
enterprises in these sectors in the coming
Nous
days.
défendons depuis 8 ans
So Europe's defence sector, which we've been asking for the last 8 years, will have to become a reality to allow European countries to defend and protect themselves, to produce the equipment they need in their countries, to allow them to cooperate more, and to allow them to reduce their dependence on outside actors. Germany, Poland, Denmark, Baltic states, and many of our partners have announced unprecedented efforts in terms of military spending. So as we look ahead to these actions, France has to recognize its special status. We have the most efficient, effective army in Europe. Because of the choices made by our forefathers after the Second World War, we have a nuclear deterrent, which protects us a lot more than many of our other neighbors. But we didn't expect, or rather, it wasn't necessary to await the invasion of Ukraine to recognize the increasing threats. We've seen how necessary it is to build our defense, and we've
Hold on, pausing it just for a second. Keep your eyes on the 2030 time frame. Interesting.
doubled our military budget, as you can see on this graph. Because of these efforts,
et des investissements supplémentaires qui sont désormais.
We are now in a position to make supplementary investments.
D'y travailler le plus vite possible.
And we'll ask the government to work as quickly as possible on this. These are new investments which will allow us to mobilize private financing and public financing without increases in tax.
Des choix.
Now, in order to allow us to do that, we need reforms, we need to make choices, and we need to be brave. Our nuclear deterrent helps us. It is comprehensive. It is a sovereign deterrent, French from beginning to end. And since 1964, it's always played a role in preserving peace and security in Europe.
Du futur chancelier allemand. J'ai décidé d'ouvrir le débat.
The future German chancellor has called for a strategic.
We mentioned peace and security. Made me think of something, but as soon as this is a few more minutes left, then we'll talk.
Debate
de nos alliés du continent européen.
On providing that same protection from deterrent to our European allies.
Et restera entre les mains du.
Whatever happens, the decision will be in the hands of the President of the Republic and the heads of the army.
Plus indépendant.
Rather, the head of the armies.
Plan militaire, mais aussi.
We have our fate in our own hands, and we need to make choices in the military dimension, but we also need to ensure our economic, technological, and industrial independence. We need to prepare for the situation of tariffs being imposed as they have been on Mexico and Canada by the US. This is an incomprehensible situation, both for the US economy and our own. It increases the difficulties of this time, but it will not go unanswered. So as we work on a response with our European colleagues, we will continue, as I said 2 weeks ago, to try everything to convince those involved that this would be a harmful decision for all. And I hope very much to be able to dissuade the President of the United States of America. This is an age that requires unprecedented decisions. Our agriculture, our research, our industry, our whole area of public policy is going to have a different debate than in the past. And that's why I've asked the Prime Minister, the government, all political parties and political stakeholders to come up with proposals that are fitting to this new context. The decisions of tomorrow cannot be based on the habits of yesterday. So, my dear compatriots, because of these irreversible circumstances, we cannot indulge in excess of triumphalism or defeatism. We will follow a single course, the course towards peace and security, faithful to our history and our principles. That is what we believe in. We believe in our security, but we believe in the defense of democracy, an idea, if you like, truth, of
du respect
seeking
de la société. Une certaine idée
freedom and respect in our society,
d'expression qui n'est pas le retour des discours de haine.
protecting the freedom of expression, which is a not return to the language of hate, but of humanism.
Notre Europe possède la force économique
That is what is at stake. We have the economic
de
strength,
cette époque.
power, and talent
Nous nous comparions aux
to
États-Unis.
respond to the challenges
La Russie
ahead of us.
Nous devons donc agir
And we have the means when we compare ourselves to the US.
et déterminer
We have the means to unite. We have the need. We have the means to be determined.
les décisions.
France needs you. It needs your commitment.
Les budgets sont une chose,
Budgets,
s'ils ne remplacent
armaments,
pas la force d'âme
defense are one thing, but it will never replace the lifeblood of a nation.
de la paix.
We will not benefit any longer from the peace dividend.
Que nos enfants
It's now
récoltent demain
up to us,
les dividendes
for
de notre
our children tomorrow,
alors nous ferons face.
to earn the dividends of our commitments today.
République.
We will confront these challenges together. Long live the Republic. Long live France.
All right, so
Blessés.
The war in Ukraine has led
take kind of a look at Emmanuel Macron for a minute, right? And I think we should keep our eyes on him, right? But not in ways as you think, but he's very important to the next steps of what's happening, right? He's trying to rise himself up, right? But I find him very interesting right now. And if you listen to the words that he's saying, things are about to get really hot and heavy. Been on this for a while. I tried to push the case for World War III. I think that we're getting closer and closer and closer to this, right? But when he's talking about peace and security, it made me think of something, right? So I know, pull it up from the Bible. It made me think of something in 1 Thessalonians, something Paul wrote a long time ago. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, it's verse 3, before I get off here. And it says, "For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape." Well, Paul was writing that during his time, right? The Romans had kind of a peace, but more like a false peace, right? There was relatively peace, but there was heavy persecutions going on, but there was this false sense of peace. So Paul is describing a false sense of peace. So when they say peace and safety, peace and safety, peace and security, then sudden destruction comes upon them because it's false, right? It's a false sense. As labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. So the words of the past we could put in today, right? So things are getting interesting, but I will say this, right? In all of my time that I spent researching all of this, I will objectively say this, right? I will objectively say that both sides do not want peace, right? Because it doesn't matter what either side says, neither side will accept the terms, right? So whatever terms they're laid out, neither side will accept those terms anyway. So is there going to be peace? Well, no. Well, there's going to be probably a very, very large escalation, conflict coming, right? At some point, if they can't work out the peace. But if there's going to be peace, as in real peace, there can't be a false sense of peace. Right now, there's always a false sense of peace. So what makes us believe that there'll ever really be real peace? I think something big is coming. I think it's been in the works for a while. I think we're starting to see this play out. And so I'm going to keep on this because I want everyone to be prepared and to know what's coming. And so that's what I do as the watchdog. I spend my time watching out for a lot of this stuff so I can let you all know. But I love what I do. I just wanted to do this really quick video, not put a whole lot of information, just listen to what Macron says. If you have to go back and re-listen to it, I urge you to re-listen to his words because they're very, very important. Keep our eyes on him, right? Because I think things are about to cook off. And if I'm right, it's going to be bad. So y'all have a really blessed evening. Thank you all again for following. This is Watchdog News. This is Jared Campbell. I'm signing off. All right. Love you all so much. I'm out.